Hello, everybody, and welcome to Hobo with Wood Live, Saturday Night Live. And you're like, it's not Saturday night. Well, it's Saturday night in Europe, and that's what this stream is catering to, are my European viewers, and everybody's welcome, of course. But currently, it is 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and as I understand it, in Europe, it's 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, depending on where you're at over there. And so I'm trying this time slot to try and accommodate those viewers. And of course, North American viewers can watch. You're just seeing it a little early, but it's still Saturday Night Live. So this is going to be a very informative live stream. We're going to go over a lot of the new features for Lightburn version 1.5. And we're going to have a couple of guests who are going to be dropping in and joining us. Scheduled to come and hang out with us are Joe and Adam, who are two developers from Lightburn. And they're going to be able to help make sure that I don't say anything. Well, they can't stop me from saying something stupid, but they can help me from, well, they can't even stop me from saying anything wrong. What are they going to be here for? They can help correct me. That's what they can do. They can correct me when I do something wrong. I do have a free file for those who are tuning in that's still going to work good for Valentine's. It's not too late to get this done. Show you what I've been doing this week and what we've been up to. And it looks like we have now had both of our guests coming into the stream. They're in the green room right now. This is going to be fun and exciting. This is the first time I've ever had guests in the stream. So what I want to do, guys, we're going to bring them in just a second. But I want to hold our questions until we get past the presentation part of the features that, and I'm not going to go over all of the features. I'm going to go over what I feel like are the really good highlightable features that are truly awesome. And some of them I really, really like. And some of them are like, yeah, well, I won't use that. But we got right brain people and left brain people. And while I don't use, somebody be going, oh my God, that's the greatest thing since cotton candy. Well, I'm going to show some of those too. It won't be something I'll use, but they're neat. I just don't have an application for them, but you might. So we're going to go over, I think I've got a list. Let me pull my list up here because I've made notes for this. And that's what I recommend you guys doing too. Get a pen and a paper, or a pencil and paper, so you can make some notes. And if nothing else, just write down times of this live stream, so that you might be able to go, I need to go back and watch that again. And you'll be able to refresh what's going on. Because I've got in the list of things we're going to discuss in 1.5, 11 different features. And I've got a bonus. It's a new feature coming in 1.6 that nobody's, well, my patrons know about it. But I've got a highlight coming for version 1.6. So you're going to want to hang around for that. For the first-time viewers, the way I ask that the guys in the comments do as I'm doing the presentation, if it's something new that you're learning for the first time, just put a 1 in the comment. And if you learn another thing, put a 2 in the comment. Every time you learn something new, just up your number. And since we're going to be talking about 11 new features in Lightburn 1.5, I'm expecting to see everybody put in a 1 through 11. And people are like, why are you doing that? Well, it helps with the analytics. And this, people who have been with me, they know. But it helps with the analytics and YouTube, and keeps helps promote. It just helps. Okay. As far as the questions go, let's hold them until we're done with the presentation part, because I may answer your question through my presentation. And when I say, okay, let's open to questions, we're going to open up to Joe and Adam and myself. And with them here, we'll be able to address about any of the questions that you guys have. And also just for grins and giggles, to see if this is a valuable time slot. Is it worth the while to do it this early for the European viewers? Drop in the comments too where you're at, and so I can see, okay, well, if everybody's watching from North America, maybe 3 o'clock ain't the best time to do it. So in fact, let's see, what have I got in the stream right now? Yeah, we've only got 82 people here right now. That's less than half of the normal viewers. But if that's 70% of all the European people who never get to see it live, I still might will continue this. So let's bring these guys in here and everybody say hello. I'm gonna bring in here. It looks like Joe just took a drink, so I'll wait for him to swallow. There's Adam. Hey, Adam, how you doing?
Good. How you doing?
All right. Welcome to Hobo with Wood. And
Thank you.
I had the chance of working with you at Lightburn Experience.
Yep.
I don't remember this being quite so full though.
It comes and goes. I haven't trimmed it recently.
All right. And there's Joe. All right. So Adam and Joe. Welcome, Joe.
Hey, guys.
I remember you as well. So thanks, guys, for coming and hanging out. And the way this came to be, having these fellas here, I was awoken by my Facebook Messenger, and I looked like, who is it? Jason Dory? Who's? Oh, Jason
Guy.
I had a Facebook message, Jason Dory. I'm like, oh, all right, and it's
just some guy.
Yeah, it's about the highlight that I'm going to share with version 1.6. And I asked him, I said, hey, do you mind if I share this? It's done. He's already implemented it or created it. I said, do you mind if I share those with folks? And he said, no. And I said, well, hey, how would you like to come on the stream and talk to people and help answer questions? He said, well, when is it? I said, it's going to be on the 10th, on Saturday. Oh, Saturday? Well, let's see. I'm going to take Saturday off, and I'll be back in March.
He's on a much needed and much deserved vacation right now. So
yeah. He said R&R is going on, but he said he's taking off on Saturday and he'll be back in March. And I'm like, okay, all right, that's cool. So you guys heard a lot of what I was talking about as far as the introduction and all goes. And what I'm going to do now, we got pushing 100 people here. We got 90 people. Still, that's about half what I normally see. So this is a new time slot that I'm trying, and we're going to see how things go. But what I'm going to ask of Joe and Adam is, because this is the first time they've joined, they don't have controls to be able to. Can you even share your screens, guys? I didn't even think.
I have a little present button down here. So
okay, all right.
Yeah.
All right, because there may be times where I'm like, wait a minute, what? Yep. And then you can say, no, this is how that works.
Yeah, it looks like it does. And I even have 1.6 up and loaded for you. So right. Not that there's a huge amount of difference between 1.5 and 1.6 right now, but
there is that one tool that, and I've got a whole video for that. So
there is that one. There's also a couple of tweaks to the features that came out in 1.5 to improve them a little bit. So I can show you what's different there.
All right. Yeah. Very good. All right. Well, guys, we're going to jump right in it. Let me pull my notes up here. All right. And I've got these in order of a little bit of a priority on ones that are less likely that I'm going to use all the way to the ones that I'm like, oh, heck yeah, finally. Yep. The first ones are the guidelines. And this is something that a lot of different creative art or design work have had for a while, where they have the draggable drop down slidable guidelines. People have been asking about that for a while, and Lightburn and Jason or somebody did it, but it's
Jason
happened.
Did.
And the way that works is we're going to cut over to here and here and make that full screen. There we go. If you come up, and it drags from the top and only from the left, right, guys?
Yep.
All right. So if you come above your ruler up here, your cursor will change to a horizontal line, and you can just drag down and drag a guideline down, and you can drag down as many. Got to get that line. You can drag down as many guidelines as you want horizontal, and you can do the same thing vertical. Now, this is a tool that would be useful and beneficial. I like using my grids, my snap grid, and I can set up my grid pattern and spacing to usually do what this does. But there are folks that are going to say, "Oh, this is the greatest thing," and they're going to be flipping over this like I am for the new tool in 1.6. But this one thing that I've noticed, guys, whenever you use these guidelines, when you drag it down, watch up in the X and Y position whenever I bring this in, switch over. When you first grab a line and you start dragging down, X and Y position is not active. It's not working.
Yep.
As soon as you drop it, though, and grab it again, now it's active. And you can position it exactly where you want. Say, okay, well, I want that at 360. Okay, drop it at 360.
Yep. You can also just enter those in if you want to, manually.
Once you select it, once it's highlighted and you say, well, I want that to be at 80, there it's 80.
The one thing that you may not be aware of is if you zoom all the way out, and as you notice on these, they have a height of like 20,000. They're just really long lines.
Yes, they are.
Yeah.
They just like there's nothing super special about them. If you have one selected, you can put it on any layer you want.
Okay. All right. So it doesn't have to be just a toolpath.
Right. I don't know why you would want to, but you can. That's my point. They're nothing special. When you save them into your project, they're saved as lines. Like there's nothing really different with them. They just have a really huge size.
Which that explains why you can select those and delete them and say, you know what, I don't know why you do this, but you can actually use the array tool to create different amounts of them and spacing that way once you pull in. Like I said, I don't know why you would do it, but I noticed that you could do it. You can lock these, select it, and then select it, and then right click and lock the selected shapes.
Yeah.
Now that's not going to go anywhere. You can't accidentally move it. So
my general understanding is that Jason did it that way, where they're just a standard line. They just happen to be huge, mainly because then that immediately gives you all of the power of the shapes and stuff that are built in without having to change anything or make it any different than what you're used to. They're just there.
Very good.
So like you said, you can lock them, you can group them, you can do whatever you want with them, move them around. So they're a little bit different than what most people might be used to with like graphic design tool, like snap grids, or guideline options, but they do work quite well.
I used to teach a whole method of construction geometry, basically building in AutoCAD classes that I taught. And construction lines in AutoCAD are just infinite lines, vertical and horizontal. And then as you're building, you build out your object at increments, and then you trim it out to. So when we brought these out, it was like, oh, it was my favorite way of drawing back in the day.
Honestly, like I said, like Jason was the one that wrote that, and I didn't know how it worked at first. So of course, when I first saw it, the first thing I did was zoom all the way out because I know how the internals work, and I wanted to see what he did with it. It was like, oh, sure enough, it's just a line.
Yeah.
All right, well, that's just one of 3 different guidelines that I see in 1.5. That's your just simple guides that you can pull down from the rulers.
Yep.
Then you have holding Alt while dragging shapes. And so I'm going to switch over here, go back to full screen, and I'm going to put 2 shapes on the screen. First, I'm just going to put a square on here. Actually, you know what? I'm going to make this a rectangle. And then I'm going to put a square about like so. And now with the draggable guidelines, if I want to, now not everybody, most people know you can, with that selected, hold shift and select your rectangle and tell it to go to bullseye, and that's going to center it up right there. Well, this is just another way. These guidelines work in a whole bunch of different ways. But if you hold the Alt button while you're dragging this square around, as you get close to there's a guideline that'll pop up. It tells you now you've got your left justification lined up. You can take it out here to the outside. Now it's going to do left and right justification to those 2 pieces. And as you bring it down to the corner, now you get another guideline that pops up that tells you you're justified with that top row on that rectangle.
Yep.
But if you bring it over here, there it is to the center, right justified to the center of the rectangle and on the center line. And if you bring it down here, you get the crosshairs in the middle. So you see, it goes for what? The left, right, and middle justifications of each object. Is that right?
Correct. Yes.
So that's cool. That's a nice way of, you can see all the different, And for some folks, and I'm one of them, I am sometimes I'm too anally retentive about symmetry.
Nothing wrong with that.
Well, there is, and there's
Nothing
not.
at all.
Well, symmetry is good, but there's also value in art of stuff that's totally asymmetrical. So
Yes.
did I miss anything about those guidelines?
Nope.
Nope.
That's pretty much all there is to it.
Yep, those are simple. Now this one, it took me a little bit to figure out. It's another guideline, and it was a guideline for when you're dragging to scale. And I think I figured it out, but you guys may have to smack me and correct me here. In fact, we'll switch over back to Lightburn and go back to full screen. So if I've got in fact, I'll incorporate a couple new features here. I've got the Polygon tool, and I'm just going to draw out a polygon. And I didn't bother looking at that size or anything. And if I go back to the selector tool, now there's this little mysterious blue dot up here on the polygon shapes. Well, used to, if you wanted to change your sides in your shapes, you'd have to go to your shape property tool down here, and you could tell it how many sides you want on each polygon you've created. Well, now this mysterious little blue dot will do just that. As you drag it left or right, you change the number of sides on your polygon, and that's cool. But now,
real quick, this is one thing I will point out that is going to be slightly different in 1.6, because we had a couple people where that dot, and this is also goes for the radius tool, where that dot it made it a little bit hard sometimes to grab some of the other handles that let you control the shape.
Okay.
So in 1.6, you'll hold down control, and then that dot will show up, and then you can move it, and then it goes away if you release control. Right now in 1.5, it always shows up, but in the future, it'll be a control option.
All right. So you have to hold control in 1.6, but the function is still there. It's just now
functionality is identical otherwise. It's just a matter of getting it to show up.
All right. So here I've got this polygon, and I want to now put this in this square and have it fill that square. And the way that I figured out these guidelines for this, for draggable or scalable guidelines, if I bring this over here in the middle, and I hold the Alt button and I start scaling this out, there's a guideline. It just popped up. I got it scaled over there. I'm going to come over here and scale down, and there got a guideline. Come over here, there's a guideline, and then same thing there. So as you're scaling it, you get guidelines that will appear.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, and it doesn't have to be inside a shape or anything like that. Like if you were out to the side, you could have done that too, just so people are aware.
Yep. So there, if I want to bring this, I'm going to shrink it down, and I say, okay, well now I just want to have it, dragging it there, aligned it to the top, and now I'm going to scale it and holding Alt and bring that down there, scale to the bottom.
Yep, and the skew handles will do the same thing. It's really quite handy to be able to drag that stuff out, and
I'll put that up here.
I think they will. I thought they will.
Well, skew might not. I think it's only rotate and scale.
Okay.
All right.
Jason lied to me.
Well, no, maybe he didn't lie. Maybe he was going to do it and just forgot to finish it. He was thinking about leaving for Saturday. All right.
That was probably it.
Yeah.
All right. Now, so looking at my notes, now that's all I seen in the way of guidelines. Did I miss anything in guidelines?
No.
Okay. Now, let's see here. So now that was guidelines, draggable, and I showed you draggable polygon sides. That's how you change your count side. Now that's going to be new or changed in 1.6. What was it? Control? In 1.6?
You hold down control, and then you'll get that. The polygon count, as well as the radius tool, which you haven't gotten to yet. But
yeah, well, that's you must be psycho or psychic one. I don't know.
Yes, to both.
Because that's the next thing I'm going to talk about is the radius tool. So let's, in fact, I'm going to switch back again and we'll make that full screen. So the radius tool, now that tool it's the rectangle tool, but if you hold shift, you draw a square. And this kind of threw me a little bit of a curve at first, because when I read the instructions, it was like, this draggable radius tool is for rectangles only. And I'm like, wait a minute. It won't work with squares, but it does work with squares.
It's the good old square is a rectangle, but a rectangle is not a square.
Yeah.
Which, knowing Jason, he would specify rectangles and mean squares, because internally, like, that tool is the rectangle tool. It's not the square tool, even though you can draw a square.
Exactly. Yeah. So now you've got this mysterious blue dot that's generated when you create from the rectangle tool, and when you click on, now will that change in 1.6 to where it's a control feature as well?
It's control, yeah, in 1.6.
Okay. All right, but right now you don't have to hit control. You just have to highlight it. And once you do it, it'll turn to the radius tool. And if you click it and then scroll to the counterclockwise position, you will get a live radius tool. And then as you come counterclockwise past the point, you get the negative radius.
Yeah,
it's so useful.
To clarify a little bit, it's when you move in the horizontal, it's that radius.
Okay.
It's not counterclockwise or clockwise. And if you move up and down, it's the other radius.
Well, I'm just curious because I've been looking. Oh, well, you know what? Well, yes, I see what you're saying. And is that this origin point on the rectangle? Do you know?
Yeah, well, it's always going to show up in the top right. I'm just saying it's not necessarily like, it's no matter which way you drag, it's going to change it.
Right.
It's just horizontal versus vertical.
Now,
yeah, see, because it stays there. So when it rotates, it's always in the same place.
Okay. All right. So that's cool, because one thing when I was first learning Lightburn, because there's not a lot of real clear instructions on some things, because it's supposed, and there's a real neat tool that is coming in this list of things. But this value down here right now, when you click on the radius and it's got a value of 5, I was like, 5? Well, 5 what? And well, it's 5 millimeters because I'm working in millimeters.
Right.
With inches, well, there it's 1.97. It's 1.97 inches. It took me about 3 months to figure that out. Because this is my first design tool I've ever worked with, period.
Okay. Yeah, we don't put the units there, mostly just because that tool on the side, there's not a lot of space.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, it is the current units you're working in.
But if the way that prior to this scalable radius, the way I was doing things would be like, okay, well, if I've got, this is a 4-inch square, give or take, and then in fact, we'll just make it 4 inches. Then I knew that if I wanted my radius to be just shy of center, the size of the radius, if I come in here and select the radius tool and tell it to do a 2-inch radius, then it's going to start at about 2 inches in and come down, and it's going to create almost a circle if I do radiuses. And
right, and it will.
Yeah. Yep. And so it took me forever to figure that out. But now with this new tool, guys, you don't have to be so smart to figure out, well, how big of a radius can I use? Because all you got to do is just drag it.
Well, do you know about the radius property on the shape properties?
Over here.
Yeah. So you can do corner radius there, and then you can do it for all of them at the same time.
Yep. But this is really neat, because if you are a visual person and you're creating your design and you're like, okay, well, I'm going to do a Western themed design, and I want to have. All right, yeah, that looks good. I'm going to do that. You don't have to. You don't have to think about it. You design based on the look and the outcome. So I like it. I like it.
Which
I
is
like
funny because for me, the first time I used that, I was like, wait, but it doesn't snap exactly to millimeters.
Yeah, it's icky.
I'm very specific about things.
Well,
Yeah, I realized very quickly the tool is not for me. I would be the one that would use the other type that I wanted exactly this amount. That tool is for more visual people, and that's fine.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now I tell you, when the center finder tool, which I learned to use and I have used it, but I found the best center finder you can use when you're trying to find your center point in Lightburn, your eyeball. I will take and find the visual center. What looks, if it's a round disc, that's easy to find. But if it's an oddball shape or something, I'll find what looks to be good on the center, mark it, put it down on the laser bed, and then move the laser point to that and say, okay, now I'll change my origin of my design and work. There's where I want it to be, right there.
Yeah.
But because what looks good is what really matters. And sometimes when you do actually align things, like especially with fonts, if they've got a curly Q out here or rounded fonts have got the stick out further than a flat font, and if you line everything up on the horizontal center, sometimes it don't look as good. And so I'll start skewing things, because this is what matters, what looks good.
Yep.
So I like that radius feature. I do. All right. Now next. All right. Measuring tool now has a snap to horizontal, vertical, and 45 degrees when holding shift. This is simple, but for those who use a measuring tool, and you need to be sure that you're measuring out at a 45-degree angle. When you select your measuring tool over here, and you want to measure straight across, and for some reason you don't know that, you can just look up here and say, oh, well, that's 4.8 millimeters or inches, whatever. If you hold shift and drag straight across, and get your cursor, well, that's a perfectly straight line. If you come down here in the corner and hold shift, now you can get a perfectly 45. And as you drag out, it's going to snap. There's a horizontal 45 that's vertical 45 and horizontal. And as you rotate your cursor, it's going to snap to those points.
This is really useful if you're manually nesting parts together, or anytime that you do that horizontal distance is really, really important. Being able to snap those measurements is really useful.
And seeing your tools in the background, that was a question I was going to ask you guys before we got too involved. Obviously, you guys are developers for Lightburn, but what tools how many lasers do you work with?
A lot. I mean, that's a loaded question for Joe, especially. He has, I think, as many, if not more, lasers than Jason does at this point.
Okay, so
I might have more.
I think you do. Yeah.
Not just a developer, but actually using the product too.
Oh yeah. The whole reason I'm in this job is I have 20 years of CAD and CNC background, and have been building these machines for fun for the last 15. That's the whole reason I met Jason in the first place. Was I built a laser right when Lightburn first started, and the only software that was really available at the time was LaserCAD, and it was hot garbage. So just like we talked about at LBX with RDWorks, LaserCAD is actually worse than RDWorks. So I was looking for literally anything to replace it, and he was like, well, here's this thing, and I need somebody to test Trosen controllers. You're the first one I found. So that is how I got here today.
All right. And then let's see here. What we got in the background back there? We got, what was it?
That's a 60-watt MOPA fiber Galvo.
Yeah, I was just looking at Galvo. All right.
There's no more lasers in the background, although I do have lasers off to the side. So here's this one, which is the Engravinator, which I designed. Now I got stuff falling off. And then I've got, hold on, to throw things. Another testing one, which is the Sculpt Fun iCube. It's not great, but it's good for testing.
Right.
And then I've got a Snapmaker Ray over there, also for testing. And I've got a couple of machines down in my basement, so I can't show those. That's where the big machines are. Yeah.
You need to take your shoes off.
I was just counting how many lasers I could see.
Yeah. And like honestly, like this truly doesn't even count. Like I have a bin over here that's just filled with controllers. Because sometimes you don't need a laser to test it. You just need the controller. And we do a lot of that. Yeah, I think last time I was at Joe's house, I was in his workshop and he had like a shelf that was just like 10 diode lasers, just all stacked on top of each other. Because pretty much when we get a new laser that a vendor wants to send to us, it goes to Joe.
All right.
I have 16 machines that I can see.
Okay.
Not all are lasers, but almost all of them are. The rest of them are CNC routers or a robot arm.
And that's just at shop number 1 of 2.
That's in my garage.
All right. So moving on to the next feature that was added to 1.5, there was a question that was in the comments before we ever went live that revolved around this and some of the features. And what was added was the cut feature for the material test. And we talked about this at one of the meetings at Lightburn Experience. And adding this was talked about, and there was some other features that were in these comments here, folks that are watching, that didn't get added and would really be nice. But first, let's just look at the cut feature, and I'll switch back over to there and here. So when you go into the material test, laser tools, material test, you've got this third option down here, the layer 2, which is your edit border setting. And that's where you're going to go in and set your speed and power for cutting through the material that you're using and testing on. But one of the questions that was brought up in here was, is there a simple way you guys could give us the dimensions of what this test is going to actually create? Now, I don't think they realized that, and when they asked their question is, when you change the size and the values of your height and widths of your squares here, that's going to change that overall size of your test tool.
We probably could calculate it. The reason we don't now is because that we basically generate it at the end, and there's a bunch of text that goes into it and stuff like that. So it depends on the size of the text. Realistically, I think it would be, I don't want to say trivial, but relatively easy to calculate the size on the fly. One of the other things that we've talked about doing with this too is that the material test will become basically a shape object. I can't tell you if or when this is going to happen, but the intent would be you could basically make a project file that has like a dozen material tests embedded into it that are already configured and would already have the size and shape so that you could just change them as necessary.
As it stands right now, though, that border setting, that cut path for the border, it's just a rectangle that's being generated after you've put the parameters in, and it's going to be a cut, right?
Right. But what I think you're not realizing is that size is not generated until you basically click go. At that point, we generate the whole matrix and the path, because it's basically just like if you click the preview button on there. Right. At that point, it generates the preview, but it doesn't do it until then. Right. So to know the size, we would effectively have to be generating in the background, which is not the end of the world. It's something that we could calculate.
Well, before you wasted a whole lot of time doing that, what would be nice to have in addition, because that would be nice to have, and the reason that they've said they'd like to have that is because of the needing the ability to, they were going to cut their test material out of scrap wood. And so how big can I make it? I got this 3-inch piece, so I can now set the dimensions accordingly.
Right.
So that's why they said it. But what I would like to see in addition to that, and I brought this up at LBX, and when we were talking about this, is having the ability to, where you've got the edit text settings, maybe put it, maybe in there it's a field you could put in, or maybe it's in the actual test generator, but you're able to type in Baltic
Like
bird.
it's a title.
Yeah, or then, and not only that, but maybe two lines: the material, and then which laser that you, and laser and power. You know,
the title is in process.
Yeah. Okay.
It didn't make it for 1.5, but it's something that's actively being worked on.
Okay. Wonderful. Wonderful. So, guys, I forget who it was that put those questions in the comments. Hopefully, we got those. And when we get done going over all these, we're going to open it up to questions in general. And I don't know about them, but I don't mind going back and saying that. But let's get through some of these presentations, and because a lot of questions might get answered just in presenting them. So the next thing that I talk about here, new shape property added for text. Now this, guys, would actually come in real handy for these designs that I've been working on, and was inspired by a file that Louisiana Hobby Guy did a few weeks back, and he did the Lord's Prayer. And in fact, I've got one of his right here that I did, and my notes are in the way. I got Nice. So there's the Lord's Prayer. Now that's Rich's design, but I seen that and I was like, oh, that's cool. So I did the Amazing Grace, and then after working that one out, this is the one I come up with this week, and this is where the squeeze feature would really come in handy. This feature we're getting ready to show you, the Amazing Grace, how it's a little bit squeezed together, but being able to keep the profiles and all the different things. I don't know. The squeeze feature might come in handy when trying to do stuff like this.
Yeah, it'll be a little bit different than the way that the text looked there. The text that you had there changed is the H space so that it actually merges the letters together, but it's similar.
Right. And I haven't played with it enough yet to find out how well I can incorporate it, because I'm thinking I'm going to be changing the H space, the weld feature, and squeezing it in order to be able to make all this happen. I'll be using all those tools.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of options for that.
All right. So now I want to go back here. Auto. There we go. So the squeeze feature is, we're going to do all caps here. In fact, we'll put this in Arial for right now. And all caps, squeeze. So for those who aren't aware, right now I've got my horizontal space at 0. And if I can come up here and change my horizontal spacing and actually bring those either further apart or bring them closer together. And if I zoom in tight where you can see this real good, if I bring this all the way down and just keep bringing it, they will eventually start to and I've got welded turned on, so I'm going to turn it off now. You can see the letters begin to overlap each other. And if you bring it together far enough, you can get all the letters to overlap. And this is how I generate that file, Amazing Grace and all those. Turn on welds. So now that's a nice welded piece.
Yep.
But the squeeze feature, put that back to 0. And if you go into shape properties, down here we got squeeze turned on. And here you put in the maximum width that you want of that. Now, if I'm going to say, okay, let's say I want to change the width right here. Right now it's at 6.8 inches. And I need it to be half of that. And I tell it I want to be 3.4. Well, that just shrunk height and width and everything. So I'm like, okay, well, that wasn't what I needed to do. I'm going to go back. If I change this, unlock the aspect ratio until at 3.4, that's kind of what squeeze does, isn't it? Kind of.
Yeah, squeeze works specifically with the maximum width feature. So if you change the max width to make it 4 inches, for example. Okay, so now you see it's actually squeezing the text. Now, uncheck squeeze. So squeeze makes it so that with the maximum width, it actually does sort of what you did initially with the width change, where you were scaling it. But if you don't have squeeze on, it's going to because the way that the maximum width thing used to work before was just don't let the text be wider than this amount. But what it would do is it would also make it the correct height for that width. Squeeze basically says keep the height you're at, but bring it into that width at the most.
And the useful part is if you click in that word now and type in there.
Okay. Text.
Yeah, just double click into it.
Oh, so your maximum width stays the same.
Right.
Yeah,
because otherwise before, even if you had changed the width using the width and height tools, if you had changed that down to 4 inches or whatever, but then you had started typing, it would get longer.
Oh my gosh! Yep. All right, guys. I just had a lightning bolt moment here. Ooh. All right. So if I'm going to say we're going to leave. Can you go into you can't see that width until you start typing it out. Okay.
Well, no, you have to have the text selected in one way or another, and then you can see it.
All right, so I'm going to do this right here may be a huge lifesaver or time saver. Amazing grace.
No, if you want those to be the same width and one of them squeezed, they have to be 2 different text objects. Just FYI.
Oh no, man. Okay,
yeah.
that was what I was getting ready to see. Is okay. Could I then change my vertical spacing? Bring them closer together. Come on, there we go. And then got them overlapping there, and I said, okay, I want a maximum width of 4 inches. That brings those down to 4 inches, but that's kind of sort of. And I want to change.
Well, okay, that may be what you want, but it's as you notice, it's only affecting the amazing, but not the grace because grace wasn't that wide. Okay, so I was misunderstanding what you were trying to do.
Yeah, no, I'm looking at these crosses I've been doing here. And I'll change that to welded. Son, yeah, this is going to be good.
Yeah, okay. I will do what you want. It's just that if you have something that doesn't already take up the width, it's not going to make it that width. But yeah, it'll do it.
Yeah. All right. So guys, this is going to be a cool feature. I'm gonna have to play with that more, and that's going to save a ton of time because on these. Well, that's kind of the idea. Whenever let's go in here, so I can see get in here. I want to keep the width all the same, and so I've got to squeeze those letters, and before, but I don't know. It gives it a good look to have the varying heights as well. And
for sure.
And squeeze though would only be squeezing the width. Does it change the height?
No.
Correct.
No, they'd have to be separate text objects to be different heights.
But I don't know. That still would work. That's good. All right. Very good. All right. So what's next on the list?
The downside to text is there is a million possible combinations of how you would want to lay it out.
Oh,
yeah, it's really difficult.
We can only do so many things, or predict so many things that people want to do.
Yep. And that's one thing I preach all the time in Lightburn on my streams and my videos. Anybody that gets online and tries to teach you how to do something in Lightburn and says, this is the way to do it. This is the best way to do it.
Nope.
There ain't one way to do something. There's 100 ways to accomplish the same thing. And I say it all the time. I'm a big believer, like you guys. You guys are programmers and developers. Are either of you certified engineers? Like I've got an engineering degree in that.
I mean, I have a software engineering degree, but
here's
not a certified engineer.
I'm an industrial engineer in background.
My life experience is I cannot think the way you do. The way engineers, and then my stepdad's an engineer. Smart. Doesn't necessarily have the common sense coming out of the rain. I don't, engineering.
Yeah, I know a lot of those
people. Are not like artistic people, and you can get to the same destination, but they're gonna go this way and you're gonna go that way. You end up the same place, and that's why I'm saying there's no right way to do something if you both get there the same way.
Right. Well, and also let me say this. So there is one person in this world that knows the right way theoretically, and every feature in Lightburn, and that is Jason Dory. And I was the first full-time hire. I've been working with him since 2020. So I'm coming up on 4 years. Actually, I was working with him before that, but I've been working full-time since 2020. And I still learn stuff. And I don't even mean just because it's a new feature that someone that wasn't me wrote. I mean stuff that's been in there for 4 years.
Yeah.
I find it.
Yep.
There are a lot of features that you won't necessarily stumble across. So yeah, I agree with what you're saying. It's like people say, no, this is the one and only way to do it. And then, all of us internally sometimes just kind of laugh. It's like, no, there's other ways to do that too.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So go ahead.
I was gonna say, occasionally we even show Jason interesting ways to use tools that he wrote where he goes, all right, yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
okay.
And I've run into that too. Like I'll write a feature and it goes out, and then someone will do something with it. I'm like, oh, that's new. Well, I didn't think about using it that way. Cool.
The only downside to those two different types of personalities is if one of them can't be open to the fact that, okay, and like I recognize that they're not processing it the same way I do. Well, I don't process it the same way they do. But if you can't be open to the fact that my way's not wrong, then that's your shortcoming, not mine.
Right.
Just because my way's different than yours doesn't make me wrong. And there was there was a point of a small point of contention in one of those meetings at LBX that Jason ruffled my feathers, and I'm like, and everybody got a big laugh out of it, and I'm like, man, I'm trying. He had later apologized because I was able to explain better, because that's another problem I have sometimes is I don't necessarily convey my point that well. But this upcoming new thing that he did, I was so happy to see that he recognized, hey, wait a minute. Because he even says in the video I'm going to show you, he's like, why are you going to do that? Why would you want that? Why possibly could you? Oh, that's a good idea.
Man.
Right.
Do you know how many conversations I've had with him like that, where I bring him an idea and he's like, why on earth would you ever do that? And I'm like, well, let's go through these things. And he's like,
and then it's like,
right.
Oh, light bulb goes off. And it's like,
that is one of the funny things with Lightburn is like, we're all makers and tinkerers and we use our lasers and stuff like that. But basically none of us that are coding are designers. So there are things like that we don't necessarily know. And then there's like things that like Joe teaches us all the time because he's actually worked in the industry on like machines like this for real, not just a guy who has one in his basement and is tinkering with it. So like Joe actually knows the correct way to use some of these things in many cases, or at least like
correct.
Maybe not correct, but like, the industrial way to use them, and that we might not necessarily think of that's how to do it.
Yeah.
All right. So the next feature I'm going to talk about, I don't even need to jump over to Lightburn to show you. But in my Lightburn, when I'm working, I've got all my different windows up for shape properties, cuts and layer properties, your camera controls, all those different things. And if I'm working over here on the laser and I position my wood, and now I've got to focus everything, I'm doing that. And I don't know what tabs where, and I got to start looking, and I'm constantly moving tabs around. So instead of it always being in the same place, I'm like, all right, where do I got to go to? Okay, there's laser controls. And this is a really, really cool feature, guys. And you're in Lightburn, you're hooked up to your laser. Control H. Control H.
Oh, yeah.
One of you, and you're
it's home.
Yeah. Which
home the laser.
Adam, right?
Yeah, you're pointing at me. It's fine.
Yeah, Adam. Now, did you know Control H?
Nope.
That Control
John
H,
added that one.
Control H will send the laser to home. It's just a keyboard shortcut. Control H, home's your laser.
Speaking of keyboard shortcuts, did you know that if you're clicked into the edit workspace, you can jog with a numpad?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. A lot of people don't know that one. It's super useful.
Yep. That's a good jog for good keyboard for jogging. But Control H is because that's one thing that and you guys are not aware, a lot of my viewers are, my brain is literally a stroke riddled brain. And sometimes I'm not firing on all 8 cylinders. And so I'll be like, I'm looking right at the control pad and I'm like, where is home? It's right there. And then, but now just control H goes right to home. So control H is really cool.
If it makes you feel better, I haven't had a stroke and I still do that all the time. So
I'm still constantly hunting for stuff in the program that I write. It's fine.
So the next one doesn't require jumping over, but I will maybe. This is probably one of the coolest features for all of you newbies out there who are just starting with Lightburn and lasers. They have added in your devices. It's a new device you can add in Lightburn, and it's a dummy device. A dummy device. So for all of you that don't know what you're doing, you create this dummy device, and you don't have to think anymore. It does everything for you automatically. It comes with all the power settings, it does everything. No, that's not what a dummy.
That's not what it does.
But
yeah,
I will have multiple versions of Lightburn open while I'm creating and working with the laser. And used to, I would have to go and find a laser that I wasn't using so I didn't accidentally interrupt my job. But now with this new dummy device, you can go into your device settings and create. In fact, I'll just jump over just solo and switch. When you go in your devices and you create manually, you have to create manually right here, no machine. And then you can create this dummy device. And that way, if you have multiple versions open, here I've got my Lasermatic running. But if I open up a new version of, right click, new version of Lightburn, and I don't want to have the two of them conflicting with each other, I go over to my laser controls and come down here, and it's not there. Now I've set it up. Does it not save it, guys?
No, you hit cancel. You didn't save it.
No, but I had previously set it up. I previously I've used this. So I had
click next.
Yep, and next. Well, actually I put 300 by 300 in here.
So most likely what happened, because you're using multiple windows at the same time, click finish, click OK.
Yep.
Is that you closed a window that didn't have it already configured. And then it saved its preferences, which overwrote the preferences of the window you had open that did have it. So that'll happen. Also, 2 things about this. One, just FYI, to open up a new window, you can just go to File, New Window. You don't have to do it from the taskbar.
Right.
But I will warn you, if you set up a new device in one, and then you have another window open, that other window will not get the message that that there's a new device configured. And if you close that one first, it will save its prefs and it will wipe out the other one.
Okay, so that's what happened. I was not aware of that.
Yep.
Will
The
other one's prefs be saved in a backup then, though?
Yes.
Okay.
So you could get it back if you wanted to.
So go real quick. Go to File.
In this version or the other one?
It doesn't matter.
One.
Okay. File.
And then load prefs backup. I just want people to see that this exists.
Okay.
Yep.
Load prefs
backup. Click that one.
Yep.
So there is a backup of every prefs change you've done for
like the last 50 or something.
50 backups. So if you click one of those, you can see how you've changed those every step of the way. So if you ever open up Lightburn, and sometimes this happens, and we honestly haven't figured out why yet, but sometimes you'll open up Lightburn and your prefs will just be gone, and it's like we just started. Just make a machine really quick to get you past the dialogue, and then
so you see the machine pop back up again there. So that was where you had it before.
Yeah. Then you can open this back up, and you can go find the preferences that you wanted. Click load, and you're back where you were. There's no need to panic.
And that's what I was looking for, because I said I know I'd used it and I knew I saved it, and so there it is.
So 2 days ago you had it there.
Yeah.
The other fun fact about this is, which this is something that you wouldn't see because you already have Lightburn and you already have prefs, but if you're a completely new user, The first thing that you're going to see after you click, activate trial, or if you put in your license key, it's going to come up with the create devices dialog, and it wants you to create a device, find one or create one. Now, if you just click OK without doing that, or if you hit cancel, normally it would say, hey, you have to create a device, and it would bring you back to the thing. It was like either you create a device or you quit.
Right.
Now it comes up with a nice little window that says, do you want to go back and create a device? Or would you like to create a dummy device so that you can just keep using? And if you click that, it just creates the device. You don't need to do anything else. You don't even need to go through all the steps, and then you can start using it. So that's for our users that they want to try Lightburn, but their laser is still stuck in customs, or the shipper hasn't delivered it yet, or whatever, and they want to play with that.
And that's what I did. I actually worked with Lightburn for a month before I even got my laser, because it was intimidating. Because like I said, I've never worked with any software of this nature at all ever before. And I was like, look at all the buttons.
It can get a little bit intimidating. There's a lot of stuff there.
But
it's okay.
The best button in the world is the fifth one from the left, undo.
Yeah.
No matter what you did, if you screwed it, oh no, I just undo. You didn't lose nothing. Yep. All right. So Control H, that dummy device before all of the lasers for dummies. I don't know. All right. Now, those were the first 8 features. I've got 2 or 3 more that I'm going to talk about, and then we'll show you I'm going to show you this really cool feature coming for 1.6 that I'm so happy for. But these next few are my personal favorites in 1.5, and it's because I had a little bit of input on at LBX and talking things over with the developers and helping bring these things to light. Now, the first one I want to talk to you guys about and show all the viewers is the new taper warp tool. But before I go and show you guys that, the viewers, now Adam and you guys, you two know about it, obviously. Mm-hmm. But my question to you is, any idea how long that tool has been in the works? How long?
We've been talking about it for a year and a half, probably.
Yeah. So I think that honestly started back with some of the Galvo stuff, because I did a tool that let you engrave on a cylinder without doing a rotary.
Yeah.
And one of the first things that we had people ask, and this was like a year and a half ago, maybe longer. One of the first questions that we always had people ask was, well, okay, well, what if it's tapered? And we had never really fixed that up to this point. This, along with that tool that I wrote back then, would let you do that. Would potentially even let you do that without, on a tumbler that's tapered, without rotating it. But yeah, we've been talking about it for a long time. I think Jason wrote it in a weekend because it's Jason and he's a wizard.
Well,
but yeah, so how long it's been talked about and how long it was actually worked on are two extremely different things.
Well, I would be curious. I would be curious to learn which weekend he wrote it, because just a few weeks ago, before Lightburn 1.5 was ever released, I dropped a video on YouTube showing, oh my goodness, how to do the cylinder correction on tapered glasses. And I got a pint glass here, and I was showing them. I was like, okay, that's what happened. You get these egg-shaped engravings, and it's an hour-long video, and I show all of the math. I show all the trig, all the everything, showing the measurement, how to calculate the angles, and how. And I'm going to switch over here to Lightburn, and let's see here, switch. And so the first thing that I did when I seen this tool, I go to Art Library, and is it in Works in Progress? Oh man, I did the toolpath. I tested the tools, what I did, and I wanted to see if it was going to do the right do it the way that I calculated it, and I was surprised to see that it did. So when you have and And guys, I'm thinking a round circular logo, but I'm guessing the taper warp tool is going to work on any size or any shape logo.
Yeah,
because it's not taking the logo into consideration. It's taking your glass or your object in consideration.
Right.
Yeah.
And taper was first added in September.
Okay.
So that was actually before LBX.
Yeah. All right.
you beat me to it. I was looking at the commit history too.
Oh, here we go.
Well, see, Joe, my Git foo is stronger, and I was searching the commit history.
Oh well, yeah. Look at you. Well, I'm a dev.
So just for giggles, right here are two different. These started out as circles,
Right.
and they're not identical. They're slightly, very
We're
slightly
close.
Yeah, you can see it. They're a little different.
but they're so close that a fast runner will never see the difference. You know, and
Yeah.
if I overlap them, there, you know, the only difference was the difference in the height.
Right.
And I was like, okay. Did somebody at Lightburn watch my hour-long video and then create this great tool? Because the tool is awesome. And the way it works, if you've got, and I'm just going to stay with the circle for right now. If you've got a logo or tape and you go into your laser tools, this taper warp is the latest tool added to laser tools. And what you're going to do is you're going to put this calculator does everything that I showed you how to do in an hour, and you can do it in 2 seconds. And I'm like, golly. But if you're doing a pint glass or any type of vase or anything that's just got a simple taper on it, all you have to do is measure your top diameter, put it in here, and then the length of it, how tall is it, and then your bottom diameter, and it's going to warp that shape in order to create the perfect outcome for the vessel you're engraving with that taper. Now,
Right.
The one thing that I would like to see, guys, not only on this tool, but on just about any tool that pops up, the resize slots and selection tools, any of those right now, and this, I think when we talked about this a little bit at LBX, but either this right here needs to be live all the time where I can switch it, because right now it's in millimeters, or it's in inches.
Oh yeah.
But I want it in millimeters, and I'm like, okay, if I like to have that.
You should be able to cancel it, switch to millimeters, and go back. But
yeah, but that's just it. I got to cancel, go back, start. Yeah,
fair.
And it's about priorities. Okay, well,
Yeah. Okay. No, I get that.
You should have done it right to begin with, and you wouldn't have to go back. But here I am, tools, taper warp. So if this one had a 50 millimeter bottom, you can see, and it's in real time. And what blows people's minds is they look at this and they're like, there is no way that that's going to look right unless the overall.
Yeah.
You should see some of the outputs from the cylinder correction stuff that I do too, and it's very similar math, and it's the same. You're like, there's no way that's going to work, but it's projection warping, which is similar to what this is doing, and it looks crazy.
So and for folks that are doing a ton of rotary with your and I'm a diode user, and most of the people watching my channel are diode users. If you're using the rotary with your diode, especially with the Rolly, how precision and perfect everything is, having this to make the shape of your product or your design better is going to really up the level of and I'm on the wrong camera. There we go. It's going to bring up the level of your finished product, because if it was supposed to be round and it looking like an egg, well, this will make you look much more professional in the work you're producing. And all you got to do is know the diameter, and your rotary came with this nice fabric tape, and you guys are probably going, what am I going to use that for? Well, this is why. Measure that upper diameter, measure that bottom diameter, measure the height of your glass. It's going to warp the image, and it's not just for circles. If you're doing, and because I did this, and it was warped in the same way. I didn't use the warp tool because it didn't exist yet.
Yeah.
but that was really blown out of shape on the laser, on the work paint screen. It didn't look right, but it turned out perfect on the glass.
I will say this though, you're sharing the tape measure. For people like myself who are really finicky about things being specific, and I will see if they're off. These are better for measuring the diameter.
The diameter?
They're just vernier calipers.
I was saying diameter because you go back to that in a minute here.
He means diameter. You mean circumference.
You mean circumference.
And that's what does it ask for in the tool?
It asks for diameter. Here's the funny thing. If you measure the diameter or if you measure the circumference and you do it correctly both times and put those numbers in, the math will turn out the same.
Because that's what I did. I screwed up. I was putting in the circumference.
Amazing.
Well, it's the wonders of everything just being off by a factor of pi, but pi divides itself out of the math and you're good to go. So
I hope my kids are still watching this and they're like, math is important.
Yeah. And I've told my viewers this in the past, and this was even pre-stroke. I just took my nephew to his birthday dinner last night. He just turned 27, but 17 years ago at his 10th birthday lunch, we were sitting in a restaurant, and he asked me where the bathroom was at, and I said, go down there, is on the left. And we come back, and he hit me in the back of the head. I said, what was that for? He said, that was the ladies' room. I said, what are you talking about? And he said, the men's room was on the right. and he looked at me and he said, Uncle Steve, do this. And I said, well, what is that? And he said, the one that makes a nail is your left. And so I will tell you left, and when you're supposed to go right, and I'll do diameter and circumference the same way. I know the difference, but I invert them all the time.
I joke that I often have conceptual dyslexia, which is that I will say the opposite of what I mean very frequently. So yeah, I get it.
All right, so that was the taper warp tool.
Yep.
The next one, this is really, I thought was huge, and this one and I don't know which one of you guys actually implemented it, but this was implemented.
Probably Jason.
LBX. No, I think it was one of you two.
Oh, then it was me. I know what you're talking about.
The array tool. Myself and another fella both had this suggestion, and this was implemented at LBX. And
at lunch while you were sitting there.
Yep. Switch over, go back here. So I've got 1.5 open, and I've got this square, and I'm going to do a simple array, and I'm going to make these. Before 1.5, you didn't have these two little buttons right here. These are what's new in the array in 1.5. And it's group results and select results. So if we turn those off, what everybody's used to when you say okay is you got that. You were back to your original shape and everything was individual and you could accidentally mess it up. Well, now with the new array features, when you create those, you turn those options on as you like, as you want. Do you want them grouped? Or you can group them, or you can group them and select them and say okay. And when you say okay, now you have a selected group of that array. And that was a no-brainer. And obviously it was because you did that in 5 minutes at lunch. But that is, it's before it was like, it didn't make much sense. I didn't see why you would want to have just that, but it was just a matter of grabbing it and you got it. But it's just, for me, it's a 3 or 4 click saver, but I love it. I love it.
Good.
And now let's see here. The next one, this one was the one that brought a little bit of contention, a little bit of words between Jason and myself. And he finally seen the light and understood. Let me open up a file, a recent project. In fact, guys, this is all for all the viewers out there. This file is the file that I'm making free to everyone watching the live stream today. This file is my infinity heart cube, and it's a simple six-sided cube. I've got a hole in the top so you can make it for like a little tea light. This is a heart that's engraved on the outer perimeter. The blue line is an engraved line. The red line is your cut line. And it's done so that the infinity is woven through the heart. So it's under, over, under, over. And you know what? I don't think the infinity needs to be open there, don't it, guys? From an artistic standpoint, infinity is open.
Yeah.
It's not over and under in the infinity, I don't think. But this file is free to everybody watching the live stream. If you go to hobowithwood.com, it's still early enough if you want to make some of these, and they're totally scalable. I'm going to switch back over here. That's these behind me here. This is the same file. I just scaled them in 3 different sizes, and you know, simple, easy to make.
Nice.
But go hobowithwood.com, and you can grab these. Now, if you're going to be using this file and you need to resize your slots and selection, that's what we're going to talk about, the new features in that tool. So back over to this. And right now, if you open the file and you go and measure that slot, it's currently 2.6 millimeters deep whenever you check it, because I don't know which version was in the free download, but you'll measure and find your slot depth. And there we say, okay, it's 2.6. Now, when you go to the tools and you go to resize slots and selection, now they've added some cool things to this that prior to 1.5, and I really didn't see the value in it until recently. And that is, you have this warning up here that tells you your selection contains the following unsupported items. You've got group shapes in this whole selection and shapes that are not paths or rectangles. But if you look at this selection here, you see these squares are all dashes. But if you look down here, you've got dot, dot, dash, dot, dot, dash. Those are your groups. If the grouped items are going to be the Morse code, and the ones that are just dashes are not grouped. So I don't need to worry about the grouped items because none of my slots and tabs are in any group. So I know that my old material thickness is 2.6 millimeters. And because of the way I design my file, and Lightburn doesn't do this. Lightburn is not as smart as I am. I'm a whole lot smarter than Lightburn. And I asked Jason about being able to work this into the ability, and he's like, no. But all of my designs that you download from hobowithwood.com, they will not be able to confuse a slot from a tab and a tab for a slot. Right now, we're looking at slot depth, and now we look at slot width. There are none, but we look at tab height. There's all the tabs. But Lightburn, unless you do what I do, Lightburn can confuse this one right here as a tab. But I've got an extra node in here. And that one extra node right there prevents Lightburn from recognizing that as a tab. It only recognizes these as slots. So when you're using this resize slots and tools, and now with my design, you've put in your old material thickness, put in your new material thickness. You want to change all of your slots? This apply button is the new thing in resize slots and in selection. So now you can click apply, and it's going to resize all your slot depths, but the tool has stayed open. Now you can change your tab height and say apply, and you're done. Used to, you only had OK, and when you click OK, it closed the tool, and you have to come back, go to your tools, go to resize slots and selection, then change your next one. And then, so this apply button is just a time saver. It keeps that tool open until you've made all the changes that you want to make. So that I'm tickled to death to see, because I do a ton of boxes and a ton of resize and slots and shapes. what I would love to see, and I don't know, this is where I don't know enough about programming to know if it's even feasible or possible or how you would do it. But if there was a simple tool that could be written to say, if I want to identify this as a slot, all I'd have to do is click on it, and that tool would automatically just either put a necessary node in there or make it so that Lightburn doesn't confuse one for the other. But the downside to this, guys, is if we look at this image alone and look at the nodes, we can see that these 4 nodes make the slot, and because this 5th node prevents this from recognizing it as a tab, it's nothing. There's 2 slots and nothing. But if I were to do a 0 offset of this, for whatever reason, a lot of the files I work with, the quickest way to fix problems with files that you get from Etsy or anywhere else is do a 0 offset of that design and delete the original.
Yep.
And that will fix so many problems in Lightburn. But look what happened to my 5th node. It disappeared. So now if I go to resize this tool or this resize slots and selection, and I now had made those 3 millimeters, now it sees these as slots and it sees that as at a tab. So do not do a 0 offset of my files. You will screw up.
Yeah. No, and what you're getting at, it does make sense. And actually, I really like the extra node trick there. You're right that it would theoretically be possible to mark like a part of a path as a tab or a slot. I'll have to think about that, but it's doable. But yeah, you're right. When this tool was designed, it was almost more for people that weren't making their own, but for people that just found, oh, look, a cool design on Etsy and it's a DXF, and it was designed for 1/8 mil ply and they have 3 mil, or it was designed for 1/4 inch and they have 1/8 inch or whatever.
Yeah.
And it was like, we do our best to guess at it, but yeah, the math can be hard. But you're right. The way that you've designed them and make those, it's there, at least from the way that we guess, there is no, it's not going to get confused.
Right. Yeah, because you're just assigning that segment as, this is not a tab.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And actually, like you're saying, a lot of way, the funny thing is the 0 offset is actually a way to fix some of those files, because some of them won't even detect that there's a tab there because they have hundreds of extraneous nodes that you need to get rid of.
Yep. Yeah. And that was one of the tricks that I started teaching people a long time ago, is for all these aggravating files that are overly complicated, select it 0 offset and delete the original, and now start fixing your problems, because that's going to get rid of 90% of them.
Right.
All right. Slots and tabs. Okay. Now, drum roll. I'm going to reveal something that's brand new to version 1.6, and it is a result. It came out of this. So, that's kind of scary, but it was also thanks to you, my viewers, who also jumped in on Lightburn's forum and said, hey, yeah, we like that, and we would like to see it, because it wasn't just my suggestion that got it done. It was your participation that said, yeah, we agree with him. It would definitely be a nice tool. So this is what woke me up. I was 4 or 5 o'clock, 3 or 4 in the morning. It was early one morning, but I didn't mind it once I watched it. So I put this together real quick, and let's see here. I'm going to switch over, and I'm going to turn my speaker down, so hopefully it doesn't give any feedbacks or anything. I'm on. There we go. Okay, dokie. So I hope, did everybody hear that?
I couldn't hear much of it.
I was wondering, I had to turn my speaker down so that it didn't backfeed through the microphone, but you could see what he done. We added the ability to give the random orientation in the patterns when you create the arrays.
Yep.
I do a lot of that with the different pattern fills and stuff, but I was actually having to go in and grab each one and rotate it, move it, rotate it, move it. But now, even though you couldn't hear it, you could see it. That new feature in 1.6 has a random orientation, and it has a seed value that will allow you, if you didn't want to have the exact same orientation on every, say if you're doing, I use those dog paws when I do my best dog frame ever. It's a picture frame. It's best dog ever. And I will have random orientation on all the paw prints. Well, I was having to go in and move each one around.
Oh, yeah.
And that was aggravating as snot. Well, now this, you know,
Yeah. Well, and the advantage of that too is that you can now use it also with a virtual array like you were showing at the end. So you're not having to bake it, and then you can use it for the rest of it.
Yeah. So, all right, close that. And I hate that I knew that if I left my speakers up, it was going to backfeed through and create either an echo or something, but I didn't know if that was going to work or not. But now I do know. All right, so
It's all good.
Switch that and go back to my notes. All right. See, what does it? I made a note for myself here. Working with the Resize tool, either a fully active. All right, we talked about that. All right. Okay. So, guys, if at this point we're an hour and a half in, we're 90 minutes in. I don't want to keep these guys too long. I appreciate both of them being here, but if they have a few minutes and you have any questions that you would like to say, hey, how about this, or how can? If I haven't been able to answer your question, we have two great resources. If you have a question, put a question mark first and then your question, and we'll see if we can got a few minutes. And we got a question here from Larry. Material test border dimensions shown in preview would be most useful. Does not need to be printed. That the only way.
We talked about that earlier.
Yeah.
Which we'll add to the list.
Yeah, he may or may not have been either paying attention or in the stream. He actually was the one that brought this up initially. So, yeah, Larry, we talked about that earlier, and it is coming. Something along those lines is coming. Larry, using the material test, is there a way to use the camera to place it on a scrap piece of wood?
Not Really? You could place the origin?
Yeah, you'd have to do the origin.
That's actually one of the reasons why, as I mentioned earlier, we're looking to make the material test and I think like the interval and focus test like an actual shape object, so you
Yeah.
can place it wherever you want, and then
Yeah.
it would show you exactly how big it is and it put you where
Yeah,
it's going to be. That's just not been done yet.
Yeah, that would be cool because I do what he's talking about is, I've got an arbitrary piece of material and it's like, where do I need to place it? And I'm not that great with my X and Y coordinates and what understanding where it is. I see it, it's right there. It tells me plain as day, but
Yeah.
I don't see that representation in my head so what I will do, Larry, the way that I do this right now, and you won't have to do this once they get this coming, but what I do is I generate my test and I do a frame. And when it starts framing, I have my framing speed set very low, and then I just start putting my piece where I need it to be. Easy enough.
Yeah.
But it'd be better once we're able to just drag that image and put it over it on the camera. But
Totally.
now let your framing speed low and just move your material underneath.
The way that I always do it if I'm doing a bunch of different material tests is I'll usually, get a fresh sheet of material started up in the, at the origin. And then every time I'm done, I move the laser head over to just past the last material test that I did. And then I do start from current position instead of start from user origin. And then it'll just go on from there and you can frame and stuff.
All right, Chicago Bob. Chicago Bob says, will it be possible to be able to snap objects to the guideline similar to the move selected objects section?
Yes. I mean, the guidelines that are in there are just lines. You can snap to them like any other shape.
Yep. It works great.
As we were joking about before, they literally are just line objects that are put in there. They're just really big.
Since upgrading to 1.5, outputs are turned off, and is there somewhere I can turn them back on by default?
I don't understand the question.
Yeah,
same.
Yeah, I don't follow you there either, Dale. Upgrading 1.5, your outputs, what output? Your layer outputs are turned off?
Yeah, I mean, because there's an output option, but they should be on by default.
All right.
That might be something where you need to reset what your defaults are. I don't know why 1.5 would have changed that, but I'd have to see what your preferences are.
Is that something that's in the settings?
No, I mean it's you can set a default. Like if you go into a cut setting, you can say make default or make default for all.
Right. But there's not a master default for all settings on.
No, unless you did make default for all and it was defaulted to off. But output has been in there for a long time. There's nothing that 1.5 specifically should have changed.
Right. So there, if you go into layers and cuts and settings and you open up a layer, okay. Yeah. So, Dale, is that your question? Yeah. So yeah, go to your cuts and settings layer, open up any layer and turn the output to on, and then go down to the bottom and say make default for all.
Yeah.
And that should turn them all back on. Right? Okay. So I don't know that your update did that, but that's quick. That's a way to fix it.
Yeah. I'm not sure what would have caused that at this point.
Can you change the background color in Lightburn?
You can change it to gray.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, there's a use dark background in the settings.
And I'm going to switch here. So I'm in the settings and
it's top left. It's the fourth one down or fifth one down. Use dark background.
Okay. Use dark background.
Yep. And then if you click OK, it'll go to that.
All right. So there's your one option there, Verl. Settings. and dark background or the white background. And Beauty, what is the best way to keep track of time left on a run, left to run a file? I try to read the timer, but honestly, I don't know how to read it properly. And isn't that a lot to do with different lasers and different controllers?
It
Yes.
depends on, it depends. So the timer should show you, as best we know, how much time you have left to run it, just hours, minutes, and seconds. But there's a couple of things. Like, so for one, if you go into the device settings, there is a machine settings panel, or additional settings. And this doesn't support it on all. Well, here, I'm just going to share it because then I can show you what I'm talking about. Let's see if it'll let me share a specific screen. There we go. Okay. So hopefully you can see this. Yep. Okay. So like this is, if you go to device settings up here, and then you can go to the additional settings tab, and there's this, and you can also read it from controller. And what this will read in is like your maximum speed, your accelerations, and all of that stuff. This is exceptionally important for figuring out how long something is going to take to run. But I will note that this is basically just for the preview. So this is just for like when you go up to click on preview, of course it shows up on the other screen and it tells you, how long it's going to take. Obviously this one's stupid simple. It's only 2 seconds. Right. But when it comes to sending the file, the problem of it is that at that point, we're not simulating it, and we're basically just going based off of how much we've sent to the controller. So like for G-code controllers, the funny thing is it's going to be more accurate if it's a bunch of small moves. But if it's like a lot of really long, straight, slow moves, it won't be accurate at all. Like, for example, because like if you wanted to cut out a 600 millimeter square at 5 millimeters per second and you click go, that timer will basically tell you that it's immediately done. Because all it has to do is send 4 lines to the controller. And the controller has buffered it, and then it's running. But it's not going to actually have the rest of it until it's done. We would have to simulate it in real time while it's actually being sent to the machine. So there's not really a good way to do it. And like, 3D printers will tell you that, but it's because the 3D printer is potentially either simulating it, or the software you use to generate the G-code is putting times into the G-code that it spits out to the screen. But there is no standard for lasers for how that works. Now, if you're running on a diode, those are usually G-code based machines. There's no way that it's going to be overly accurate once you start it and once you send it. If you're on a higher-end machine with something like a Resize controller, those on anytime you go to send it, it's not streaming it real time, and the controller itself will tell you how much time is left. That will be correct, probably to within a couple of seconds. But that's because the controller simulates it and it knows exactly how long it's going to take. So unfortunately, no, there's not really a good way.
And if time is a real big factor for you, I'm guessing, Beauty, you might be working with a 5 or 10 watt laser, and it's really taking quite a bit of time to cut through the material you're working with. Always step up to the Rolly Lasermatic MK2 with the 30 watt laser module and cut your time. And
Yeah.
But yeah, and I would, and I don't know why Beauty's looking at it, but a lot of times if I'm looking at a design in preview mode and get it, that's how I use that as my estimated engraving time, and that's how I come up with a price for a job. And then whenever it turns out that, wow, that time was way off, and now my price and my profit's going right out the window. So
yeah, and that's why you want to use that read from controller option, because that is going to give you the most accurate things. We will try to simulate the whole thing, only in the preview though. But you can also put those values in manually if you know what they are.
All right. Warp taper, is L actually the height of the glass or the actual length of the taper? It's the glass, right?
Yeah, that is one of those things that can be confusing, because at least my understanding of the way the method works is, we're assuming that it's a consistent taper,
Mhm.
So how you adjust it actually doesn't matter where you're putting it on the tumbler. It just matters because it's a consistent angle. So all we're doing is we're adjusting it by that angle across the
Yeah.
whole thing.
So it's
So no,
between the points that you measured.
right.
Right. And
Yeah.
that's what I was going to say is whenever I use the tool and testing it, it asks me for the top diameter, not the circumference that I measured, and the bottom diameter, not the circumference that I measured. And since those were the 2 points that I put in, I said, well, that was the length,
Right.
the length between those 2 points.
And honestly, it makes it easier to do because it's easy to measure the top and it's easy to measure the bottom. It's not easy to measure those like in the middle where you're going to put it.
Right.
So,
yeah. All right. Let's see here. This one, S3. I bought a file from Etsy. Opening the file, it changes all of my presets, speeds, and power. Is there a way to prevent that?
2 ways.
Yeah.
Yeah. One,
import the file.
Yeah, Joe said.
Open it.
So yeah, import only pulls in the graphics. The other way is to actually set defaults for yourself. Because then the next time you open a new file, it'll go back to the defaults. Because basically what it does is if you haven't set a default, it's just the last thing you used on that layer. That's what it gets set to the next time you use it. But also import.
All righty. Question mark. Can you make a pair? Can you make
I think a pair of scissors.
If you're able, go for it. Read that.
Can you make a pair of scissors to be able to trim short and not whole objects, like in Vectric VCarve Pro? I mean, there is a trim functionality. It's just it doesn't have scissors that you can drag around.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You know, like node editing. Is that what
Yeah,
you're talking about?
node editing.
Yeah.
In node editing, you can do that. Well, here I'll share again because why not?
This was Adam's baby for a really long time.
This was one of my first things that I ever did, and I spent a long, long time on it. So I'm going to keep these up here, and we'll put that and there and there. Doesn't really matter. But so if you select these and go into Node Edit, you can hover over something and hit T, and it apparently doesn't work at the time.
Because you're in tabs.
Oh yeah, I was in tab mode. You're right. I clicked the wrong one. Okay, so if you hit T,
do that all the time.
Yeah, it will trim. Tab was the other thing that I spent a lot of time on. So, but yeah, so if you hover over this, basically what it does is it finds the nearest intersection. So like here and here, and it will trim between that, or say more likely, you're probably wanting to trim something that's outside of the shape. You can do that. The thing he was talking about in Vectric is there's basically a scissor tool, and you just kind of click and drag over the things that you don't want, and then it gets rid of them. We've talked about it. We just haven't gotten there yet. But yeah, so you can trim stuff out like that. You can also, let's see if I get rid of this, you can also hit E to extend, and it sort of does the opposite. It goes until the next intersection that it finds, and then it will add that on. So yeah, you can do it with that. It's just hover over the thing you don't want, hit T, and it goes away.
All right. So, and let's see, there you go. Midnight, if you're not familiar with the node editing features in Lightburn, go to my content in my YouTube channel. I have probably a 45-minute long or hour long of just all of the tools in the node editing tool. The E, the edit, the T, the trim, the D, the delete, the M for middle. I go over every one of those features one by one in detail on node editing. So until they get those scissors, those trim and extend and all that, once you really get familiar with those shortcuts, it's node editing is easy and fun to use.
Yep.
Ronnie, is it now safe to download?
I was waiting for this one.
I'm sorry. I was one of the ones who was a little responsible for it. Some things changed with our build setup. It was always safe for anything that wasn't Windows 64-bit, but the Windows 64-bit build got a little bit janky. It always worked. It didn't work when you wanted to check for updates, and it didn't necessarily always run immediately if you didn't have the latest run times, which I won't explain what that is. But yeah, it's safe now. We fixed all of that. They're fine. You can download it. Don't worry, it's good to go.
All right, and Mercer Outdoors is in the house. Is there a way to get continuous rotary marking in the future rather than by split size? Can't seem to get smooth fill. I've tried matching split size and line interval as well as wider splits.
So a lot of people do continuous rotary marking, like as in it's basically turning every time you do a scan line. They'll do that by setting the split size to like 0.1. I don't recommend doing it because it's slower. Mostly because most controllers, they kind of have trouble with coordinating the move the rotary, move the head, all of that stuff, especially if the head's moving really fast. It is very common to be done on galvos, like this machine that you see behind me, because those have the just vibrating mirrors for the head. But even still, we don't necessarily recommend it. For reasons of the mechanics of the machine, basically. I am not the best at when it comes to doing rotary things, so I can't really give you any tips on how to fix the problem that you seem to be having, though, unfortunately.
And the short answer is no. We'll never be able to do continuous rotary on galvos simply because of how the controller handles how we send rotary jobs. Yeah. Every split is a new job that gets sent. So
right. That's why it really, really slows down on galvos. People will try it, but it's literally like sends a full job, does all of the scanning, stops it, sends the whole thing. Yeah, as Jason said, the hardware doesn't work that way.
All right. Regarding homing, my unit many times does not home all the way to the lower left. Is that a Lightburn problem or an Orto problem?
That is an Ortor problem. The only thing that Lightburn tells or does is tell the machine to home. Whether or not it does it is up to the machine.
So I've got
you're binding somewhere, or
but even though I've got the fix for it, and it's right here, homoswood.com/rolly.
What it is on the Ortor specifically is it's using sensorless homing, so it's just looking for resistance for picking up the home. There's no switch. So it's hitting resistance somewhere, and it's like, hey, we're home.
Will there be another LBX this year? And if so, will it be in the same location or somewhere new? And I know that there was discussion about that. Has there been any new discussion?
There's nothing official.
Okay.
Yeah. At this time, our plan is to potentially announce something sometime this summer. We have no hard plans of anything for 24, and anything. There's no hard plans for anything yet.
No. So. Now, which one of you guys are in Europe right now? Okay.
Me.
And Joe, are you in? Where are you at?
I'm in Peoria. I'm where LBX was.
But yeah, you were the reason it was in Peoria this year or last year, right?
Yeah.
Look, okay. We're going to Joe's house. But the rumors that they talked about at the LBX was that if there was 2024, the possibility of making it not so convenient for Joe, but possibly moving it to West Coast or East Coast or Vegas or somewhere new and exciting. And
it very likely would be in a different place.
Yeah, the reason we had it here was first year event. I have all the contacts here. I was putting everything together, so it was easier to put the event together with somebody on the ground.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Question mark. The laser was on low power for checking where do you frame. Now, all right. The laser was on low power for framing. Now it's not. So that's just a setting in your device.
Device settings.
Yeah, and I always get the screwdriver and the gears and all mixed up. If it was on and then you did the download and it got turned off, go into your wrenches and screwdriver, and there's a button down there for enable laser or laser on when framing. And you can even set the power. In fact, I'll show you here. Switch and full screen. So if you go into your wrench and screwdriver, right here is enable laser fire button. laser on when framing. Make sure both of those are turned on, and then you can set your minimum power. And depending on your laser, on my Rolly Lasermatic MK2, you must be at a power greater than 0.75. I think on some of the other lasers, I was able to get it to fire at 0.5%, but on the Rolly, it has to be over 0.75 in order to fire the laser. But turn both of those on and then put it down about 1%, and you should see your laser fire when framing. And switch back and take me out of there.
So there's real quick. There was an interesting question that I saw that I want to actually show a solution to.
Oh, okay.
So
what was the question? Because you can't.
The question was further up, but basically it was, can you remove the background of an image in Lightburn? Which is sort of yes.
I just said no.
Yeah. Well, okay. There are ways to do something similar. This is not exactly what I think they necessarily wanted, but there are ways to do something that's like it. Here, let me share this again. I can show you what I'm talking about. Okay. So should be able to see this now, this picture of this handsome gentleman. So if you, it depends on the image, but like if you trace it, I might have to bring in the cutoff on this. I don't know. Let's see. So if you trace it so that you can kind of get just the background out of there, I'm going to go with that. That's close enough. I'm going to then ungroup this so I can get rid of the giant camera flare that's on my shiny dome of a forehead. If you select these, then where? Oh no, it's because I have too many selected. So this should just be one of them. So you can it has to be one shape or one group shapes and then one image. You can say apply mask to image, which I got it backwards. So I can basically invert that. Well, okay. See, this is the problem with live demos of things I just thought of.
Right. Yeah.
Because in reality, what I should have done with this was, hold on. Was to trace this, and I think there should be a, well, I need to invert it. Anyway, the point of it was that you can take out the, I'll just show the contrived example. If I dumbly trace this, you could obviously do this much better than I'm doing. Okay, so then the image is in there, and then if I say apply mask to image, it's going to leave everything that's on the inside of the image. So it treats it the same way that we treat a fill. For example, like if I had changed this from line to fill, obviously that goes away, but it makes it so that the fill is the image itself. So if you want to basically trace around what you want and then do apply mask to image, you can effectively get rid of the background. The fun thing though is if I select this image independently, I can now move it around and it updates in real time. So it basically just fills in the image with, or fills in the shape with whatever image you have selected.
Okay. Next question. How do you get rid of duplicates that are sitting on one another of the same kind? For example, there's two squares, and when you burn, it burns twice. You just select one of them and hit the delete button.
There also is a delete duplicates option.
And that is in the optimization settings?
Yeah, well, okay, there's that too. So when you optimize it, when you go to burn, it will automatically delete duplicates if you have that selected. But if you select shapes and then go to edit, there is a delete duplicates option. It's also Alt-D.
Alt-D?
Yep.
So I got Control-D all the time, but I've never used Alt-D.
Yeah, Control-D will duplicate. Alt-D will unduplicate.
Okay. But the reason I think I've just used in the optimization settings to where if there are any, because so many of the files that you get, and the ones I see the worst ones are ones that people maybe have created in like Adobe Illustrator or somewhere,
Right.
There'll be 30 versions of that same line. I'm like, what the heck was they doing?
Yeah.
Now the one
a
thing
lot
I
of
will
those
note,
are programmatically generated. Sorry.
yeah, the one thing I will note is that delete duplicates will remove lines that are identical. Remove overlapping lines, like if you've got two lines that are overlapped but slightly shifted, it will kind of make those into one line.
Right. Yeah. So Norman, if that didn't answer, or if you didn't get the answer you're looking for there about, because there are a lot of ways you can eliminate those, hit me up, hobowithwood@gmail.com, and I'll be glad to get with you and show you a couple of those different things. But those are pretty easy to do. And follow up, and we're not going to keep you guys much longer. We're coming up on 2 hours. But follow up on Mercer. He said he has a fiber, not a laser, with a Chuck style rotary. He was the one with the question about the. Okay, so
we answered that right.
Yeah, it's due to the hardware.
All right. Randy says, "Did you get my question? I has to leave for a second. Sorry, I don't know what your question was, Randy."
There were a couple questions that I want to specifically address. One was the Xtool P2 and if we will be supporting that. And the answer is probably. We've done a lot of work recently to natively support the Xtool D1, D1 Pro, and the S1. And better support for that is going to be coming in 1.6. I've got a couple alpha users using it right now, and we fixed a lot of things for those machines. The P2 is almost a DSP level of complexity. It's a completely different controller with a completely different communication protocol. And we're working on it, and we're trying to get it better. But it's one of those where everything we do for that specific machine only goes towards that specific machine. And we have literally thousands of machines that we're trying to support, and a CNC program that we're trying to write. And so, yeah, we're sorry. We definitely hear you. We want it to be better, but time. So
for the record, we've gone from 5 devs to 9 in the last 4 months,
2 weeks.
So yeah.
Here's a question for you that I was meaning to ask earlier when we were talking about all the different things in the laser tool, the material test. Is there any possibility or any plans in the future to be able to save images of material test? Because there are a couple manufacturers out there. I don't have a WeCreate and don't want one, but their software actually will, when you pull up a material, you pull up Baltic Birch, it'll pull up an image of a material test and show you different, power, burn levels and stuff. So that
but
that's really cool.
Doable. I mean, especially if you already have a camera in your laser. But
yeah,
we can consider it.
All right.
Someone just real quick. Someone asked, when do we expect 1.6 to be released? 4 to 6 weeks. Actually, that one's coming out relatively quick.
All right. So
1.6 stuff we want out.
1.61. If you'll add those images that I was just talking about, just get right on that. Yeah. And I've just now noticed that Joe has been going through and answering a lot of your questions in the comments. And I don't know if you've seen this, Joe, and I know you've already answered him, but John asked about, can we default our window defaults and not Lightburn? And Joe answered him, sure, load prefs backup will load the window setup in that backup. And then he come back and says, hey, how about English for the elderly? So did you do any more follow-up with him, or
I told him we talked about the prefs backup earlier in the stream and to reference that as much as he could. So getting much more description than that in live chat is a nightmare. It's not going to help anybody.
And there's no way to have a default like window position and size.
That would be a good feature add at some point.
We could, yeah. It's just there's no way to do it now.
And I'm trying to roll through these real fast because I want to get this wrapped up for these guys. I appreciate you guys for coming and hanging out with us today. But Veril adds, why is there no eraser in Lightburn? The node editing is going to allow you to make a lot of those changes, but an actual eraser tool, I'm guessing,
that's the same thing as like the Vectrix scissor tool.
Yeah.
People have asked for both. It's doable. We just haven't done it yet.
Well, and it's not
literally
going
on the
to
list.
give you the because we're not doing raster image editing like the eraser tools normally do.
Right.
It's not going to give you the results that you want. The trim tool will.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to trying to, because I didn't know how to say it. It's because it's a vector and not the raster, right? And so if and for those who don't speak vector raster, because a lot of my viewers are 70, 80-year-old guys, and they're like me. This is the first design tool they work with. The vector images are the image that you've created. The square is 4 nodes. And if you had an eraser tool and you were saying, I want to erase this part of this corner of this square, and you erase this, well, you've only got 4 nodes that you're actually working with, and the eraser doesn't work like you think it should work.
Okay. I guess that is different than even what I was thinking, because it's the sort of my naive point of view from the fact that, to me, I know that it's a vector tool,
right?
Not, as Joe was saying, a raster tool. You can tweak the output of how a raster image looks, but you can't edit it in this tool at all.
Yeah. We've talked about doing some like freeform erasing tools, but it also requires us to create a freeform line creation tool, which is
on the list.
Thing. Yeah. I've seen a couple people ask about the CNC tool, MillMage. I can give a quick show of what that looks like at this state if you guys want to see that.
Sure. That was the only reason I went to LBX.
Do you do CNC tools?
I've got a CNC that's got 4 inches of dust on it and not from use. It's sitting idle waiting on MillMage.
Got to get you that beta.
I just saw somebody question beauty bubble, make a circle, move the circle over the objects you wish to delete all. That's cut shapes. It's just a little bit different, but that's basically cut shapes. But here, I'll show you CNC tool really quick. Let me pull it up on the screen. Are you going to freak out on me? Okay. So this is MillMage. I am running a dev version from a Mac, which is why it's in dark mode. You won't be able to see it in dark mode. I'm sorry. But this is MillMage right now. I don't think we actually showed any demos of this at LBX. So the big differences that you will have when you're using it, while we still have the layers down here, the layers are purely for organization now. They don't affect your operations. And all of our operations are based upon shape. So if we, I don't think I have any operations in here that use multiple shapes, but say I wanted to make a pocket on this, I can define how deep I want to make the pocket. So we'll make it 6 millimeters deep with a 1 millimeter step over, or 1 millimeter depth per cut. I want to use my 1/8 inch end mill. I'm going to rush through this. I'm sorry, guys. There's just not a lot of time. And a lot of this is going to change. I can make a pocket operation on that, but I can also make a profile operation to clean up the line afterwards using the same tool and the same step down. And that's something that you wouldn't have been able to do in Lightburn. We wouldn't have been able to do the two different operations on the same line without creating sub layers or duplicate shapes. And then if I want to preview that, where's it at?
And real quick, while you're showing that, to answer
there it is.
To answer some questions from the chat. End of Q2, maybe. Release, and yes, G-code devices only. So Gerbil would be one of them.
Yes. So one of the cool things that I really like about this is our workflow is very similar to a laser. So this is a project I just made the other night. I'll show you guys the finished product after I'm done screen sharing. But as I was going through all of this, yeah, I was like boring out holes, pocketing, profiling, and you'll see as I'm going through this, not many of my shapes are showing up bold, and that's showing the operations that affect these things. And that's because I was kind of treating this as a laser as I was going through and just picking these shapes and then hitting start, and it just goes to the machine and runs. So there's no step where we have to like save out the G code, we have to post process anything. Like if you've ever used Vectric or Carbide Create or Easel or anything like that, where you're not directly controlling the machine from the cam, there's always that intermediate step. With this, I define the operation, I define the shapes, and I can hit start and go. And it really speeds up short run projects, anything where you're experimenting and you're not creating the same thing 1,000 times. It really speeds that workflow up, and I really, really enjoy this workflow that we're creating here. So I can't see the stream anymore, so I don't know other questions. Adam, did I miss anything that's fun?
That's what I was asking you. Mostly, yeah, people were asking about, if it like Gerbil will work, what's the release date? And then there's some questions on some other stuff.
Yeah. One of the cool things that we're introducing in this is custom G code. So
this is actually 1.5, by the way.
Yeah. This is in 1.5. This is out now in our laser setup. If you have a machine that has specific operations that you need to do, you can define blocks for those operations. So like on the machine behind me, it has a AC spindle, so I need to give it a few seconds to spin up. So I do a G4 P3 after I set the spindle speed, and that gives it a pause to speed up. We can do tool change commands. We can change the way, like we can add custom G code at the beginning if you need to like add a warm up time or anything like that. Custom G code at the end. We can change how your cut moves are built on our output. So, if you need a B axis instead of an A axis for your rotation, we can change the way that works. We can change rapid moves. We can change how your homing commands work. So if you're running a duet controller and you need a G28 instead of a $H for homing, that's easy to do. There's lots of really interesting stuff. And if you're running a machine that isn't Gerbil and is something like Mach 4 or Linux CNC or UC CNC, if you've got like a Stepcraft, we'll be able to save out G code for those things. We're going to have more flavors as we go. Right now we're testing Gerbil and Linux CNC mostly because those are the machines that I have here. So yeah. I'll stop sharing.
Okay. I'm see two that I'm going to address real quick, and then we'll wrap this up so you guys can get out of here. Larry asked, "Is there a printable node function list?" Well, Larry, you don't need to print it if you simply go over on Lightburn and hover over, make that full screen. If you go to your node editing tool and put your cursor over that and just wait, well, come on. Now it's going to make a liar out of me. Why is it not doing it, guys? All right, there we go. Why is it not populating?
You've got stuff selected.
Yeah. Well, it finally. But if you hover over the tool, and it's not just node editing, it's all of the tools that are on your menu board there. If you put your cursor over it, it'll come up with if there are any shortcuts
there it is.
Yeah. There are all the tools right there, and that will stay on the screen for about 15 seconds before it goes away. But there's SLCDIMBTEA. But beyond that, if that's not up there long enough for you, if with that highlighted, if you hit F1 is going to populate or open up your web browser if you're connected to the internet, and it'll take you right to the node editing tools in the Lightburn software documentation. And as you scroll down, there is all of those controls right there. So hover over it, and it will automatically pop up. And then if you hover over it and hit F1, it'll open up the documentation. And let's see here.
You guys were sorry. Keep going.
This came up in the last live stream, guys, and I never noticed this until I was doing a demonstration. Why does kerf generate rounded corners?
Because it generates sharp corners.
Huh?
So kerf corners are going to be, the path will be rounded, but it's rounded to make a sharp corner on the laser. So if your corners with kerf are rounded, your kerf offset's too big.
Yep.
So
it's the way that the way that kerfs are generated. If you do the offset tool, it's the exact same thing. We literally use the same code. So it creates an offset at whatever your distance is, and then it cuts that. And the way that offsetting works with that, the way the math works, if you have a sharp corner and then you offset it out, it becomes rounded.
All right. Well, and I'm glad that they brought this up, because I just noticed the free file that I shared with everybody on hobowithwood.com for these boxes. I saved it with kerf in the cut layer. So you may want to address that before you go cut it. And I'll show you, since it's on my screen right now, what they're talking about and what I'm seeing. And I still don't fully understand what you guys, why are you switching? Switch. There we go. So here, this is just a regular little 90 millimeter box, and it's got a 90-degree bend on it right there, a cut, but I've got a 0.135 outward kerf.
Yeah.
And we look at the preview of that, and blow that up here. There we go. It's got a radius on it.
Yep.
That's because your laser is round.
What you talking about?
It has to. The laser beam itself is round.
Well, mine's rectangular, but
laser should be round.
Yeah.
Properly beam shaped lasers need to be round.
Well, diode's rectangular, but yes, I get it. You mean
the if you let me share my screen again.
Yeah.
So, and I'll show you MillMage again, and it'll be a little more maybe. And Adam, if you can explain it better, feel free to jump in. But
not entirely. I know what you're talking about with the. Although honestly, like if you do it, even if you do it like on a CNC, like with a big quarter inch end mill, if you do that rounded path, it's going to be potentially rounded still.
Yeah, it could be potentially rounded. So it's, in this case, I'm using an 1/8 inch end mill. This is going to be a sharp corner. but the path is rounded. So you can see in my preview here that the output is a sharp corner, but because my end mill
you're
is
not
an eighth
sharing your
inch.
screen.
Oh, I'm sorry.
What?
Now that I did.
Okay.
I had to share it. Now, there you go.
I was gonna
Well,
blame
Joe,
it on
the
that.
outside of that is rounded. Oh, you're right though. The path is rounded too.
Yeah, so the path is rounded, but the producing shape is going to be a sharp square corner. And if your kerf offset is set up properly, it will be the same.
Now I follow you.
So,
now I follow you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know that everybody. I don't know if everybody's light bulb just went off, but mine did.
Yeah. So if you've got a big, I'm using hand signals now, so I'll stop sharing my screen. If you use a big shape to output a sharp corner, that shape the path has to be rounded in some way. It could be and then over, but to maintain smoothness of the path, roundness is helpful. Somebody asked if I would share the project I made, and this is it. It's a little open source printing press that I'm going to take to a STEM fair next week. So we're going to do a bunch of CNC'd ink printing blocks, and yeah. Oh. We're making things with MillMage. I'm making things with MillMage.
Randy, I don't know. He says his license key is not working to download. I'm guessing 1.5 because we ain't at 2.5.
Yeah.
Any reason why a license key wouldn't work?
The only reason your
you're out of
existing
update.
license key would not let you do 1.5 is if your license key is expired. So if
Your
the last time
updates are expired, so
right,
for
you can still
everybody,
use Lightburn. Sorry, go ahead, Joe.
You get 1 year of updates from purchase, and sometimes we even give you a little wiggle room on that for like things like patch updates, like 15.1 or 1.5.01. You would get that, but you get 1 year of updates from purchase. You can use the license forever, but you get 1 year of updates from purchase.
Right. So if the last time that you renewed or purchased it was more than a year ago, you would be able to get everything that was released up until that point. But if 1.5 came out after that, then you wouldn't.
And then
You'd
you don't have to buy a new license. You just have to buy renew your upgrades. It's $30.
And that's where
regardless of what license you have.
And guys, if you are even hesitant about upgrading or wanting to renew your license or whatever, go buy something different and pay for that. Good God, this is the cheapest software that you can buy, and that does so much. The reason that my CNC is covered in 4 inches of dust right now is because all of the software out there that does what I want it to do is $400 or $500 a month or something stupid. So the prices for MillMage, the prices for which they haven't released pricing on MillMage yet, but I'm hoping he's going to do something comparable to he done with Lightburn. The prices are a no-brainer. And I think you put in there, somebody did it. You guys maybe have like 460,000 licenses or something right now. Well, the price is really, really low, but that's why he took Saturday off and he'll be back in March. With that many licenses, he can afford to be gone till March. But
it's more he just never shuts off.
Never takes vacation.
Ever. Right, so, he's at the ski lodge in live chat right now and updating things. So,
Larry's wanting to give a shout out, I'm recognizing you guys as thanking me for this topic and the Lightburn Gurus, and great idea. It shows the customer support, the great customer support from Lightburn. And you guys, I do want to thank you for coming and hanging out today. I appreciate you answering a lot of these questions. And Joe, you've been really busy in the feed. I don't want to keep you much longer. We're pushing 2:15. These guys, they've kept me in my stream, just me. This dumb old redneck, they've kept me in here for nearly 3 hours, and I'm not going to do that to you guys. I do greatly appreciate you being here, and I extremely thankful and reflect or acknowledge what they said about the customer support at Lightburn. The few times that I've had issues, they were able to get resolved quick, and the ability for those who are not familiar with the Lightburn forum, that is something that you do need to sign up for. And forum.lightburn.com, is that it?
Yep. Lightburnsoftware.com.
Forum.lightburnsoftware.com.
Yeah.
If you have a problem and or a question that you're not able to, either shoot me a question or at hobowithwood.com, hobowithwood@gmail.com, and I'm happy to help. I reach out, whether you're one of my patrons or not. I try to help anybody that has issues. When it comes to Lightburn, I'm pretty good at figuring out some things. When it comes to the technical stuff, I'm a little bit lost, but I might know where to point you. But if you have a question, go over to the forum and put it. You can search the forum. There may have already been 3 or 4 posts about that same question, and there's your answers right there. It is a really great resource, and if it's not already answered in there, you put that in there. Somebody from the support team is monitoring that every waking minute. No one's allowed to go to sleep, right?
Yeah. Nope.
So
they never allowed to stop.
It's actually it's one of the reasons why I'm here in Europe where I am, because we're working on adding people in Europe so that we're covering that time zones and covering those languages and all of those things. So yeah, we're doing our best to be available for people whenever. So
I'm nowhere near the bottom, and I've not gotten to all the questions. Joe's gotten to a lot in the comments that I haven't even seen, and I appreciate you for that. But guys, I'm going to wrap this up here and let these guys get out of here. And I do greatly thank you for spending your Saturday afternoon and your Saturday evening with Hobo and viewers. And it is really greatly appreciated. So guys, thank you for being here. And when you're Joe, you'll probably see, or where is Jason normally officed out of? Where's he work from?
East Coast in Connecticut.
Okay, all right. So he's not even in your neighborhood. I was going to shake his hand, hug his neck for me when you see him, but you ain't going to see him. You'll see him before I will. But
we don't have anyone that lives, I think, in the same city, except for maybe like 2 people.
Yeah,
everyone is somewhere else, basically.
All right, guys. Well, it's been it was a great pleasure, you guys coming and hanging out, and I can't thank you enough, and I'm sure they all got a lot from it. I've seen a lot of numbers ticking up there for a while, so that was showing they were getting some good information from it. A lot of thank yous coming in. So, guys,
thanks for having us, and we super appreciate everybody using our software and showing us what they use it for. So it's good to see people making cool stuff.
Yep. It's addictive. Oh my God, it's addictive. So thank you. And whenever there's another version comes out with some really great things, maybe we'll have the guys back on here again if we can twist some thumb screws. Maybe we'll have to. Maybe we won't have to. Maybe both of them are as much of a ham as I am, and they just love doing this. They don't have a life, and this is all they know.
This is my life. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we don't stop.
All right, guys. So, I'm going to call it. Thank you.
Cool.
Guys, have a good evening. And the way this live stream ends, I never know when it's going to go. So I just hit the end stream button, and I just keep talking, and eventually it signs off.